form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. And the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Chandara Samayambe De Ata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha Baba Ganjo Sanji Gae Dembe Doji Shil Gadaji Badaji Wadaji Jagi Baji Metum Biju Danji Shilingo Yezoha Ngere Andonya Jejo Jiwada Mido Nube Yenan Jiwada Doma Junji Mono Zonyoji Naji Le Jane Na Le Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Radha Mandala Gami Radayami. Jodan Jodi Jodam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonani Androla Menjia Zonye Rubario. Jodan Jodi Jodam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonam Yendrola Menjia Zonye Rubario. Jodan Jodi Jodan La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonam Yendrola Menjia Zonye Rubario. There's room over there also. Just make yourselves comfortable. Welcome to the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center. Very good. Jishin Rundru. Sarva Mamu Yuri. Rundru.
Want another cushion? I don't use them.
Chairs is a chair.
Sit you again. You're welcome to sit in a chair also.
Sit in the chair. Cushion? No? Okay. No.
당가서 다 사간 나와서 말 사간 나와. 근데 내가 봐서 상집이 주신 안에 베비 제바치네 중이 봐도 사간 나와서 그래서 말이야.
So right now we're celebrating the month of Buddha. And we find that this runs from the 1st through the 15th on the Tibetan calendar. And we celebrate Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana.
어제 다 사간다를 다 사가 모주더라 그랬어. 사가 모주더서 나 들른 가서 거한 하지 주나야. 거한 봉지. 루빈 편유사레스 사가 모주도스.
So this is also called the month of increase of 100,000. And what that means is that every virtuous deed that we engage in is multiplied by 100,000 times.
어제 사가 모주도스. 다
So right now we're going through the text called The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa.
Dendru lanse de chiba is marva dendru lai me den tu ji glan chibu chungu lan ding lan ane donge ju da bu taba tu ji glan de la ding lan chibi lan tene wo de shanju sen la so ba tu so chibi sanji gu tu ji glan de la chibi lanse de marva.
The Tama, the Shanchu Jesem, the Garilaps, the Jibu Chembe Lang.
Chibi lang sen shuo sna ane shanju sen la so ba tu ja gro.
Okay. So what is the meaning of this text called The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment? This text explains the pathways for beings of small, medium, and great capacity. So we find in Atisha's text, which is considered the root text for this, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, in the beginning a quote that's a stanza that states, "Understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics, or I shall clearly define these three." So what does this mean? Here it was referring to first the small, referring to those small pathways. And those small pathways, or those pathways for beings of small capacity, are the pathways that lead to the higher realms of cyclic existence. And then those medium pathways are those pathways, or those medium scope pathways, or those pathways that lead to the abandonment of suffering, or nirvana, or liberation. And those great capacity pathways, or great scope pathways, are those pathways that encompass those and with the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So this is what is meant by those three capacities, three specific pathways leading to three specific goals.
And then the and then Nalenta Kebel Naga Jonalasu, the Sugati Jebaki, put in Yajatan, Juson Marbe. What is?
And for those of you who are new to the Chenrezig Center, these texts are two different categories. These are books that are behind us here. And here we have the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. And these are texts that have been translated from Pali and Sanskrit into Tibetan. So we have 100 texts that are the pronouncements of Lord Buddha in Tibetan. And then we have the authentic Indian commentaries. And the authentic Indian commentaries have also been translated into Tibetan. And there we have 213 texts. And these are leaflet texts. So all of the traditions within Tibet, whether it's Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, Galup, or the Bon tradition, they all rely upon and have as a source of their information these texts here, the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. And below those texts, we also have the collected works of Lama Tsongkhapa, as well as the collected works of Kirtup Je and Jelsop Je, Lama Tsongkhapa's spiritual sons.
Zamali Chukan Jasun Duba Naji, the Kanju Tenju Dana Chu Jukalo, what the Landon on Duduaris, Chivichumundi, Chemusungi, Dana on Duduaris, Josan Tungi Chun Duja, Peden Levash, Jason is.
So This work, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, that presented these three capacities, the small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity, sometimes called scope as well, is considered an ocean of instruction. And the reason for this is that the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment is compared to all of the waters. They compare the lamp to the lamp for the path to enlightenment to the great ocean. Just like all the waters in the world eventually end up in the ocean, all of the streams of texts of the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, all end up into Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment and are presented according to three capacities: small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. So we find in Lama Tsongkhapa's abbreviated stages on the path where it compares this to the ocean. It says, as these stages can fulfill every desirable aim of all nine kinds of beings, they are a power-granting king of precious instruction. Because they collect the streams of thousands of excellent classics, they are indeed an ocean of illustrious, correct explanation.
집에 좋은 가도들다 집 사지들라 삼바장 삼바도 집에 들러로도 세와 사지송 삼바장 온들라 지된 심한도니 줄로 집어다 지된 심한디 더 되면이 지된 심한디 더 되면달라 전도들 렌데니 전도 사지는 렌데 가도레스 렌데리 시상바다 시다 삼바 산내 조도 샤주 사지송은 소발레드 말바.
So the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment gave a presentation in abbreviated form of the three capacities: small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. And we could put parentheses of the teachings for beings of small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. So right now, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment that gives a very expanded explanation of those capacities. And we're currently in the section called Training the Mind in the Stages of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Small Capacity. So that section has three subheadings. First, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, and then the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity, and then dispelling any misconceptions that are related to a person of small capacity. So under the first category, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, we find two headings underneath that. First, developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and next, relying on a method or a means for achieving happiness in one's next life. So we're dealing with that last category of relying on a method or a means for achieving happiness in one's next life. And under that category, we find two categories. First, refuge, and then karma and its results. So we're currently in the karma and its results section of the text. And there we have an outline with three major headings. First, karma and its effects explained in detail. Karma and its, a general presentation of karma and its effects, or karma and its effects in general. And then second, karma and its effects in detail, or the particulars of karma and its effects. And then finally, we have the category of how one engages in virtue and engages in virtue and abandons non-virtue after having reflected on karma and its effects in general and in detail or particularly. So we're in that last section of how one engages in virtue and abandons non-virtue after having reflected on karma and its effects in general and specifically. Diksu. So what is the pathway for beings of small capacity? These are the practices that lead to the higher realms of cyclic existence, which are the practices that are the pathways to the higher realms of the gods and humans. So those practices are as follows: going for refuge to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engaging in ethical behavior that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and then if one engages in a negativity, acknowledging that downfall, acknowledging that negativity by way of confession.
다 유슈바 저거 지지던 가를 저선도네 와데
So we find the Christian tradition, we have in the Christian tradition very similar practices. One goes for refuge to Jesus, goes for refuge to God, abandons 10 negative actions, and so forth. So we find a very big similarity here. So then Hindus and Muslims also share a very similar idea. In Hinduism we find that going for refuge to Shiva and then abandoning the 10 non-virtues is also present within the Hindu tradition. And then the Muslim tradition, there are similar ideas.
Cheba doji jambi suwa te kato laring chembu beyi jena jatang jashu changaro guchu kongaro be jatang guchu kongaro inchi kusu angaten.
We're on page 251 in the English, the bottom where it says in particular the way of purification through the 4 powers.
What the cheba doji jambi suwa that nga so ane diba magawachu Deva Mako Judele and Dungajinu Nuba Yuare and Nyola Chiag Nuba Yuare and Idata Tundul Chiag Nuba Yuares. What Nuba the Pachuma Tuaina and then Azulu Dungayungre and Nyola Chiata, Idal Chiata, Tundul Chialusuri, Neka Yueta and then the Mabazuat and Azu never told you something. No, what they never took never so worse, Marba.
So it's in particular the way of purification through the 4 powers. So when we engage in misdeeds, such as the 10 non-virtuous activities, we are engaging in deeds that have the ability to, in the future, cause us to have to experience suffering, have to live in the lower realms of cyclic existence, such as the hell realm or the hungry ghost realm or the animal realm. So since this is a negative circumstance, since this is a problem, it's necessary then for us to apply something so that we can stop it, because it's something that's unwanted. So if we apply the 4 opponent powers, we're able to get rid of those things which would later lead, those negativities that would later lead to suffering. Then the Sanjay Beche Gare?
Angulumala Sanji Shijo to Mokujatan, Kujuko Sene, Sanji Tanjene, Sanji Kuniabotojo Sumba Ingero. Then Yalashevala Tene, Tibetan, Daju Tuson, the Dunganu Males, Sanjay to Lesso. Lesso, Gonga Mepachi. So during the time of the Buddha, we find the story of Angumala. Angumala was told by a bad spiritual teacher to kill. He was given a wrong instruction, and he killed 999 people. And then he met with the Buddha and was given the teaching on the 4 opponent powers. And as a result of these practices, these purifying practices, he did not have to experience the suffering that would have normally come from that behavior. He was able to purify it and achieve the state of foe destroyer
within that one lifetime. So we find this story in the Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, and then we have within the Tibetan tradition the story of Milarepa, who was able to purify his negativities and achieve Buddhahood in one lifetime.
What the Tibet Khensur Tago, Khensur Tibet and Asu Tibet mess a lot to Mare, Masu never told you Asu Tibet.
So now we know who has been able to purify their misdeeds. So now that we know someone has been able to do so, we can't say that we have done so much wrong that we can't, or that we can't purify our own negativities.
Tangasu Turu Tabaku, Trin Tayandua. Tenaji, Luigi Deva, Nagi Deva, Iji Deva to Saint Kudu, Saint Kudu, but they were there to look at Javandamores. Never told you something, Shana Jevaina, Saint Luigi Deva, the Nagi Deva to Tanugu.
So our mind is similar to a cloth. A cloth can become stained. So our body, our mind has become stained by the non-virtuous actions of our body, speech, and mind. So like a cloth that can be cleaned of its stain by washing it over and over again, our mind can be cleaned or purified as well by applying the four opponent powers that is compared to the washing of the cloth and removing the stain. The four opponent powers are able to purify our mind of those negativities.
So we'll
get to the various antidotes later on in the text.
Chemanyaba Majabas, then Luigi Debat and Agi Debat and Agi Debat so Chimasa somebody Sosa Jegre, Numumo Atan, Pame Batuanju, Gota Masheba Tuanju, do you go mobile or as they waki, and then Rameba, Luigi Deba Sayon, Sanugore, Nagi Deba Sayon Gore, and then Iji Deba, what the what the Deba Musaguares, what the Deba Sajabatuso, Takashaju Mares, Takashaba in a Deba Tele, Dungajinu Nubatan, Nesuntia Nubatan Mabachamares, Jen don't tell du, and the Dungayungre, Nesun Jere, what the Sodajina, never told you something what they Luigi Deba Nagi Deba to Solote, Dungajinu Nubatan, Nesunchi Nubate, what the Shanguares.
So it says in the text, though you make great effort not to be defiled by wrongdoings, faults may arise due to such things as carelessness and preponderance of afflictions. So here, and then it says, if this happens, it is inappropriate to disregard them without caring, so you must try to apply the remedy about which the compassionate teacher spoke. So here, even though at times we really don't want to engage in non-virtuous activities, we are have a lack of independence at times because our afflictions become strong and we become careless and so forth. So we shouldn't feel that there is no hope because we are, even though we don't want to, accumulating non-virtue through our body, speech, and mind. We shouldn't feel that there's nothing that we can do, because even though we've accumulated these faults that do have the abilities, when the causes and condition are there to give rise to suffering of the lower realms, of the hell, hungry ghost, and animals, there is a way to purify these negativities, and that is through the four opponent powers. So we need to be careful because these things, these things such as carelessness and lack of mindfulness and so forth can arise and make us accumulate non-virtues.
What the Luigi Deva Naga Deva to Sasava, you know what they 다서 맞아봐지 tomba 토지 쟁게 네 디바투 파장하게 타운 하고 송요 알았어 송바들 매고레스 네 산지가 디바 다게 타 네부 도지라서 봐도 어떤 뭐 송요 알아 도서 쉐바지 근데 냐라 저기나 네 디바 다 도레스 어디 안굴 말하다 말아래봐도 잡고 가서야 다요 알았어 송대사래.
So then here it says that, like in the case of Angumala, we are able to also purify our misdeeds. And here it talks of the remedy. If this happens, it is inappropriate to disregard them without caring. So you must try to apply the remedy about which the compassionate teacher spoke. Here, compassionate teacher is referring to Buddha Shakyamuni, and the remedy is referring to the four opponent powers that Buddha Shakyamuni spoke of.
다들 맞다 동아시주비서 대바시주비 추진이 용도와 동아시주비서나 안에 잡았다 안다 그냥다 어디서 그들 동아요 들어와 동바단게 네 어디 녀바들 동아라 그래 동아 동바단게 녀바들 동아 어디 동아서나 어디 녀바들 샤도 맞이나 어떤 게서 동그레스 동아시주비 추스 다 잡아다 안주 저기 다 가데 동아시주비 주데 잡아다 안주 네 나와 시실래 나와 질 샤부중아 중앙 장을 서중으로 주거다 어디 동아데 그지 시주거래 동아시주비 주데 수중샤고 나와 시시 최중앙라고 잡아다 안주게 어디 수중 주거래스 다와 시시 세중알하고스 다와질에 양은 세바 중알 지제 네 라스 지 어디 소중이니 쪽으로 어때 잡아다 안 쪽에 어때 동아시 주비주 소중초네 어때 동아도 네바 더 다바시고래 드나지 샤주 샘비도 와요나야 도바당 계속나 샤주 샘발 소중초아요래 하도당 게 네 동아쇼여 봐이나야 하게 수중초아요로 어떤 제송 대사래 동아시집이 주내서 동아시집이 주내스 동아수수네 송바 따르샤라사 동아수수대 장세 상아 수수는 송비 수중차고 손이들.
So then the next part speaks about downfalls or infractions. So this word infraction, the word downfall is much more literal because it literally means falling down from the vow to the lower realms, falling down to the lower realms. So it says, now in regard to how to remedy any infractions or downfalls, do as it is explained in the context of the three vows. Rinpoche again said the reason that this is called a downfall is because you fall to the lower realms of cyclic existence. And this is related to the three types of vows. So there is a difference between a downfall and a misdeed. So a downfall is related to these vows. If one breaks one of the vows, it is a downfall. And in the context of the individual liberation vows, for instance, monks and nuns do a practice called sojung on the 15th day of the month, every month, and then also on the last day. And this is a ceremony to restore any vows that one has created a downfall around. And then with the bodhisattva vows, they also, there is a practice of sojung for purification if there's been a downfall. And the tantric vows also have a process of sojung in order to restore one's tantric vows. So here it says in the context of the three vows, this is speaking of the individual liberation vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows.
동바 매바 이나야 되는 디바 요로다 디바 류주군에 디바 먹어줘 어디서 시주비 주대 어디 또 네바 도지군에 어디 시주고 그랬어 말베 네바 디바 시주비 시주바네 도지샤데스 디바 시주비 주대 다 디바도 동화서나 가정가서 뭐지자도 말베 디바도 동화 디바서나 침비지나야 디바 인게 라중 제나 디바 인게 워들 디발다 디바 디바 먹어 사드 말아 동화서나 동바 요켄슬로 마도
Lesser.
어디요 말보다 동바 메겐슬로 동화요 말했어
Lesser.
what 디바도 동화를 마지 말고 디바 동화를 마지제
Lesser.
디바도 동화니까 임바 안에 잡아게 넘버를 세바이나 디바레 동화니가로 슈금버 세바데 디바레데 동화마로 슈울 동바요 마로 네 동화이나 디바이 마저 네 잡아기지 신주에 무슨 신주 주 말에 신주바이나 네 동화용거래 디바이 말에
Lesser.
what
이게 true. Lama Chiran the Chang, Maton, the Tonwayan, my.
chanto 사자는 이거 이제
You need the Uma Rinchin Chenwa, the Gewa Judru. The Nama, Chang Maton.
모두 주주로 처음부터 자도
Nye Tsampa.
처음부터 소화전서로 처음부터 소화전 다이는 체면도 신지가 안 되고
Okay. Nye the Dunda did Tsampa.
그것을 나오고
Okay, so we have, when we look at the two words, misdeed and downfall, these are two different words. If it is a non-virtue that is common to a householder and a monastic, then it is considered a misdeed. But for there to be a downfall, there has to be a vow present that is broken. So if someone doesn't have a vow, they can't create a downfall. So we previously went over this and compared these two and found that we have 4 permutations or 4 possibilities when we look at these two words, downfall and misdeed. First, if we look at something which is a downfall but not a misdeed, we could use the example of a monk cutting down a tree. A monk cutting down a tree is a downfall because it's a vow to not cut down a tree, but it's not a misdeed. So that's the first permutation. The second permutation, something that is a misdeed that's not a downfall, and that would be a bird killing a worm and eating it. The bird doesn't hold a vow, so it is a misdeed because it's killing, but the bird doesn't hold a vow, so it's not a downfall. And then something which is both, or something that is a common locus between the two, downfall and misdeed, would be a monk or a nun killing a bug. Here, it is a downfall and also a misdeed. And then something, the Nikamayimbi Mu Ribong got. And then a rabbit with the horns could be the fourth possibility. So here we find that there are 4 possibilities between these two.
다 대바 시주반 취지샤데서 내부 도시로와 취지 내비도 레스 샹바 샹주 샹바 샹바 좀 취지던 데나 샹주 샹바 좀 샹바 취지던 데나 네 대바 시신 사바 세지 너번 주로사 시신 사바 세지 너번 주로스 샹주 샹바 취지던 데나 내부 도시 참바이나 내부터 참바이나 시신 사빌로 디바 치주 시신 사바 보나 네 디바 먹어 주세고선 주름 산단에 디바 먹어 주사바이나 어데 시신 사빌레 네빌레 데브뉴와 네빌레 두고로 다 두그레스 망에빌레 타발로 투동요 모레스 어떻게 되는 거도.
So then it says, however, you should remedy sins through the 4 powers. So just as a note, this is the comparison. Up here, remedy any infractions, that's downfall. And sins here is referring to the word we're using, misdeeds. So if you were to compare them by 4 permutations with the words here, it would be the 2 infractions and sins. But we just used a different word. Then the sutra giving the 4 teachings. Maitreya, if bodhisattvas, the great heroes, possess these 4 teachings, then they will overcome any sins that they have committed and accumulated. What are the 4? The power of eradication, applying remedies, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of foundation. So here, it's saying that any non-virtues can be overcome. Those non-virtues that one has done and accumulated. So if it is done and accumulated, it means that it has been thought about for a very long time, and then it is necessarily a karma that you are certain to experience, or that you will definitely experience. What need is there to talk about the karma that you're uncertain to experience being able to be purified? So if even the greatest karma that's accumulated, can be purified, then of course the karma that is uncertain can also be purified as well. Less so. So we find very similar ideas in the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, where Buddha stated that even the 5 heinous crimes can be purified utilizing the practices such as the 4 opponent powers. So we find it's very similar. That point that Buddha made is very similar to the point that's being made here, where it states that then they will overcome any sins that they have committed and accumulated. So the Bodhisattva is able to utilize these 4 opponent powers and purify the greatest amount of non-virtue. And then the hearer, the solitary realizers, are able to purify a medium amount of non-virtue, and then the hearers are able to purify a small amount of non-virtue. So the hearers are Shravakas, the solitary realizers are Prachika Buddhas, and the Bodhisattva is the Bodhisattva Yana. So these are the 3, and they purify great, medium, and small amounts of negativity in that order. Less so. So the first sentence shows the 4 opponent powers in an abbreviated way. So possesses these 4 teachings. And then it says, what for? And this next sentence gives the expanded explanation of them. It actually divides them. So it says they are the power of eradication, power of applying remedies, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of the foundation. These are the 4 opponent powers.
What the Sombal Jagan, Natsuina, Tujiniba Shedro, the Sombal Jagadua. 10 days to the Chandu to Sanji Kumatmarba. What is it, the Redua? I'll do Jizmojana.
So do. These are the 4 opponent powers. And we start with the first, the power of eradication. And here, this means having regret for having done what you have done. So if you've engaged in a negativity, regretting having done that. So this is the first, the power of eradication. The second, the power of applying remedies, or the power of applying antidotes. We find 6 different points that are made. Points such as meditation on emptiness, or interest in emptiness, and so forth. And then the third is called the power of turning away from faults. And sometimes when we give this teaching, usually when we give this teaching, we put this third, the power of turning away from faults, or sometimes translated as the power of commitment, as second, and the remedy is third. But in this text, we find the power of commitment or power of turning away from faults in the third section, and this third, and here, this is where the practitioner states that in the future, I will not accumulate this deed again. So it's a commitment, a behavioral commitment, number 3. And then number 4, the power of the foundation, is referring to going for refuge, generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So these are the 4 opponent powers in a very summary of them, rather, a summary of these 4 opponent powers. So that's the summary, and then as we go through the text, there'll be a much more expanded explanation.
So
those students who are older students will know much of this material, and those new students will be able to easily, slowly ascertain it. Today, many new people came, and this is a very important section of the text. So everyone listen very well, carefully, please. All sentient beings want happiness and do not want suffering. Since sentient beings do not want suffering, and we don't want suffering, we have to see if there is a method that will allow us to eradicate that suffering. And non-virtue gives rise to suffering, so is there a method to get rid of that? Because these negativities that we possess have the ability or the potential to later give us the experience of suffering, then we need to figure out what to do. So we can purify these negativities that have the ability to give rise to suffering by applying the 4 opponent powers. And then this makes it so they no longer have the potential or ability to give rise to that experience. Just like if you take a piece of rice, if you plant it, will be able to grow into a sprout. But if you take fire and burn that piece of rice, then it no longer has the potential or the ability to give rise to its result, which is a sprout. So if we apply the 4 opponent powers to our negativities, it's very similar to the burning of the seed. It no longer those negativities or those predispositions no longer have the potential to give rise to suffering. The Deepa Sheen, okay.
Deepa Sheen Ramaji, Sheen, Meg Sheen Senero.
Bless him.
What then I never told you, May, and Deepa Dungaji, but the Kalekale, no,
So the 4 opponent powers could be compared to the fire, and the misdeeds compared to a tree, for instance. Misdeeds could be compared to a tree. So the 4 opponent powers are like the fire that burns the tree down of the misdeeds. And the misdeeds can give rise to suffering, so it's necessary to get rid of them. So by applying the 4 opponent powers, we can get rid of the misdeeds in the same way that fire burns away a tree, or wood.
Tila to tombone toma mebane magi lela joba moides naba senjiba kundu shubita zade diba saja badile joba jeadres joba moide
Lessa.
ane de jola name jinjebo jitu gongo sosa
Lessa.
name jinjebo diba mago jidle ane diba dunga yungre name nesul chigre watin santana ane wati dibal gabu yungmarwa ane dibal joba yungro wati jusento wati joba jeyage tashi to wati kasimode diba magi name jinjebo dabi jinjebo jutu jinjebo tusu gongures diba magi wati shada majina diba magi diba tile ane dunga yungre dunga ngasun togu mare ngasun jigre ngasun jiwa ngasun joba yungmare to santana diba mago wati joba lego yiro
Namin Depo,
Nami Devo, wate diba mago wati nami devo ngasun mare
Okay, Nason. Okay, Dixon.
ngasun chenegres niwal jigre yedal jigre tundul jigres
Lessa.
ane dunga yungres
Lessa.
wati su ngalo santana ane ngasun jiwa ngasun gabu yomaro
Lessa.
ane dunga gabu yomaro
Lessa.
ane diba mago wati joba yungu
Lessa.
tashi wati santang watis
So the power of eradication. The first power is great contrition for having done non-virtuous actions since beginningless time. In order to feel this, it is necessary to meditate on the way in which you produce the 3 effects of actions, fruitional and so forth. So it's necessary for us to look at the various effects of our non-virtuous actions. So if we engage in non-virtuous actions, the fruitional results are the lower realms of cyclic existence, of the hell, hungry ghost, and animal. But then we also have causally concordant results, and then we have environmental results. So we have all of these different types of results. So if you were to analyze and meditate upon the various results of non-virtue, then this would inspire you to not want them. It would inspire you to not want to have those things that give rise to suffering, because you don't want suffering. Here it states that it's necessary to think about what your non-virtuous activities will produce, and when you recognize that it produces suffering, and suffering is unwanted, it will make you want to turn away from these non-virtuous deeds.
To
turn away from these misdeeds and regret those that you have committed. Dixon. Go.
What dibal joba lesona tene la to lam bise what kasure so ban shabe so ban sombe shaba da sonji sungi gun shabas ta ga de tiji bai bu da pre ane so ban shabe ta ga de sonji gun do su ngolo de ba ina diba ta no marba ane tiji bai bu da pre diba ta wo re so be son shabe Wando Zundana Dibatanu, Nishira Yevuna Dibatanu, what is Kanan Dibatanu, what is on the Marbe?
At the time of putting this into practice, do so by way of the 2 methods, the confession of sins in the Sutra of the Golden Light, and the confession of sins by way of 35 Buddhas. So once you have this regret, then you do a practice. So any sutra that you recite will allow you to purify your misdeeds. So if you recite the Heart Sutra, this will purify misdeeds. If you recite the 35 Buddhas or the Sutra of the Golden Light, it will purify our misdeeds. So once we have regret, we should do this.
So we find in
the commentary on the 35 Buddhas of Confession that it gives various amounts of our misdeeds that are purified when we recite the names of the various Buddhas. And it states that when we say to the founder, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, it states that when we recite just that line, we purify 10,000 eons of negative karma.
What the Kebachi, Devatasu, Pimar, and then as what the Punan Dijibata to my other Zusanji, Peja or Shaja to Walashas, what the Lulus in the Alila.
So isn't it amazing that this purifies 10,000 eons of negativity? Just to say to founder Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, fully completed Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, is very easy, is it not?
And
then it's also very similar when we do the name mantras, such as Buddha Shakyamuni's Teata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Ye Soha.
What the Martin Chuchu and Hamo, Chenmo, then the Judici, Idanzu, Hakatan, Tiber, Tibetan Buddhists.
So in the center prayer book, we have so many different mantras. And also, any mantras we find within the 4 classes of Tantra have a power to purify.
That's what the Kebachi Devata, Sud Tabas, Angulu Malata to the Tabares, and then Devataba, the Kale Shaker is na, and the Kales Kogur is na, and then as Mulan Tassan Yunguris, Mulan Saint Chatambo, Baba, Tamasum None, Chasumba Dele. And the Luzubul Nasa Mebaje, and the Watinilantana, Chi Kalaputa Vasaya, Hatanamanjia, what the Nilantania says Mona, and the was sent Chibudu not Dibatagoris.
Kala Lamboche.
Lamboche Shambala Subo, and Mamuyorta, what the love.
So now we know who has purified their misdeeds, Angumala and Milarepa. And then how do you know if you've purified your misdeeds? So it is stated that we can see various signs in our dreams if there's been a purification that takes place. So this is only if we are physically and mentally well, and we are looking at very specific points in the night. So we don't look at the first part of the night's sleep or the second part of the night's sleep. It's the part right before we wake up, the 3rd stage of our sleep, where we can see various signs. And if we have a dream that we're eating good food or drinking something good or mounting an elephant or seeing a llama, or if we just wake up and feel generally good when we wake up in the morning, that's a sign that a purification has taken place. So we'll take a short break.
Yeah. Tao never doji non to Thomas Juba Timber Juba. Taniba the kitchen, Taniba never good Jubita the raw. Niba to Niba la Trusa. Never good Jubita to the truth or true. What the Abanga Woodua, what the Abanga Woodua. To Niba la true less. Do the Samala Tembas and do the Samala Tembata. Do the Samala Temba and Shishin La Subi, do the Silambat and Zimbatan, Luba Nasos, do the Samala Tembas, Tagada, Sanjik and Dotuso, and the Tripai Buddha, and the Sheraki Buddha, and the Sanjik and Dotus Dembaina, what they Silul Zaya, what then the Dembaina, what they Tibetan Grace, Thomas Redwa, Shishin la subendu de samal temba dans temba ne Shishin la subendu di silambas silambal ta mamara den tuna ya parama tuna dona di gojrota zimbatan lubatan lubatan silambatan zimbatan luba ta ti den 노디 치드스 예 디 된다도서 네 치 된다도 야무진 거지래 네 루바 워든제나 네 워데 디바다는 담부제 드레도와.
So this section is very important. This is the second of the opponent powers, the power of applying remedies. And here we find 6 different remedies that are presented. And the first is 1. Dependence on profound sutras includes such activities as receiving the oral transmission of sutras, such as the Prajnaparamita, retaining their meaning, and reading them. So here, receiving transmissions of sutras, such as the Prajnaparamita, or memorizing their meaning, or just simply reading them out loud if you're not able to actually memorize their meaning, just to read them out loud. And these can be such sutras as the 35 Buddhas of Confession, or the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. So this is what is meant by dependence upon profound sutras, whether one is receiving the transmissions of them, memorizing the meaning, or just simply reading them out loud. So we can see how good it is to recite the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Chinese Buddhists and Tibetan Buddhists all recite the Heart Sutra, and we can see here how important it is. Just as a note, Prajnaparamita, Heart Sutra is part of the Prajnaparamita teachings. But there are 100 texts here, so any of those 100 that you recite are the same. So you can do any of those, recite any of those texts. So we can recite whatever we have in our own hands, whether it's the 35 Buddhas of Confession or the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Here, sutras such as the Prajnaparamita, retaining their meaning and reading them. So reading them and thinking over and over what the meaning is of it. And by doing that, then you're purifying your misdeeds. Then Rinpoche, Charan Tomani Som Dendrup Tomba
Tanyeba Chunila Mebanes what the Nebatoje Chunila Meba Tony Gumbat Marva, Tony Guna, Da Meji, USA, Chunilas, Jujin, Domane Tabar, Ichebos, that damage, Kazak damage, the Chuji damage, Chidon Demo Maruba de Le, and Demo Maruba de Kazak damage, Chuji damage, Rota, Kazak Demo Maruba de Kazak Dema, Kazak Miami Chu, Demo Maruba de Chuji dame. What does the Sunday have done with us? Kazak Demo Maruba, Kazak Naseate, Pomungama Karula Tuni to the Ores. Ne no to be double tune to Madapa Radio Maris. Madapa Rod made Tendi image, Jusin Sandan whatever. Tendi image, Tendi is on, and then got never to Tombaris. Ne, ngade ngawonya bitubi tabala matuba rangon juba yomares rangon juba tuwa yinde tendi imbejer what in the sun mo ta is marbe.
So the second point is interest in emptiness, means to comprehend the reality in which there is no self, in which and which is luminously clear, and to have conviction that the mind is primordially pure. So here, when we speak of the comprehend the reality in which there is no self, when we look at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, it says, the profound son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound prajna paramita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. So here, this is showing the emptiness of true establishment, so that the five aggregates do not inherently exist from their own side. They are merely a collection that is put together, and then they serve as a basis of designation for a naming. But there is no five aggregates that exist separately or inherently from its own side, because it dependently originates. So dependent origination shows that things are not truly established and are therefore empty. And when we look at selflessness and the lack of true establishment, we have two categories. We have the selflessness of person and then selflessness of phenomena. So the difference, selflessness of person is the dependent origination of the person, and then the selflessness of phenomena is anything that is not person. So that's what the second category is referring to. Anything that is not person. And that thing's selflessness. So that's selflessness of phenomena. So because of dependent origination, phenomena is also not truly established. So in the case of the aggregates, in summary, the aggregates are not truly established because they dependently originate. They are merely a collection that serve as a basis of designation for nominal designation.
What the Nasagan Pumunga Suzon Tuna Jovare, Joanga Suzon Tuna Jovare, Matuba Rantu Maris, Pumunga Tabala Matuba Rantu Maris, Rantu never to Vitua. And then a share even no years at what they never to Yomaris on to Waris, Mensivo Maris.
So when we look at the five aggregates, the five elements, these are merely come together as a collection. There are no they Rinpoche they Yanju Suranam, they Yanju Suranam, ni Jason, they Zhonga dang Pombonga.
Pombonga, that Nasa, Pombonga, Tuna Truba Marva, Pombonga the man and I home do that. Pombonga the Tune, not Trodero. Pombonga the Tuna Truba Yeza, Pombonga Matuba Rantu Yamaro. To be tabala matuba rantu Yamaro. What does this one?
So when we look at the eye itself, the eye is merely designated upon a basis of designation, such as the five aggregates and the five elements. But there is no intrinsically existent eye that is separate from that basis of designation. Therefore, the eye is not truly established. So when we look at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, it says there's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, etc. Here, this is referring to the lack of true establishment of those things, not their non-existence. There is no assertion of non-existence being presented in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Only the lack of true establishment is being presented.
What the not the Pungal Tabala Matuba Rantu Truba
So the grasping that there is an independent self that is separate is the grasping at true establishment. So independence on the grasping at true establishment, then attachment arises. And then anger arises. And delusion arises. So when we look at the root of all afflictions, we'll find that it is the grasping at true establishment. Grasping at true establishment is the root of cyclic existence.
Tenzin şey meba Tony Chesuna to be Tabalama to around Meba Nesuna, Tenzin Nundre, Tenzin Nosuna, the child Nungre, Control Nungre, Tamul Nungre, Tiwangi Sashabi, Debatukangal Nunu.
So by meditating upon emptiness, one is able to abandon that grasping at true establishment, and then as a result of that abandonment, since it is the root of the afflictions, then there is an abandonment of the attachment, an abandonment of the anger, an abandonment of the delusion. So one is able to get rid of the root of cyclic existence and the root of the afflictions.
What the dancing to what the Yamuba Tantric Sawa Radio Susan, Deme to be shared the dancing no Dultene, the chat on Conto Tamal what they don't need to be shared the no was. The chat con the Shashatamu on the Sashabi, Luigi Deva, Nagi Deva, Easy Deva to the Lord, what don't need to be shared the no was a mother.
So then the wisdom realizing emptiness serves to harm that which the grasping at true establishment gives rise to, and that is the misdeeds of one's body, speech, and mind. Because we are we have gotten rid of the root of cyclic existence and the root of the afflictions. Therefore, the reactions from our body, speech, and mind that are negative are harmed, or it serves as an opponent to those negativities as well.
What the woman you will in your motion, Tomu Nashi Dalai, doesn't dish in Mola Sasha, so she sent the Rama by Rola Nijin of Talantus, Tomu Nashi Da, Nara on Trovazin, and Tomu Nashi Dalai, Tagging dish in Mola Sasha, then Nai, what did the Debatovanzin, Tiwanki, the qual cooking on the cook could at what did Rory to Kudu was. Tomangashi Dalai, Dagan Dishi Nola Chajo, so she sent the Rama by Rola Nijin of Talandus, what the Nijimbo. Omanju go the Nijimbo Chujo to Marva.
So we find in the Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, where it states that first there is a grasping at I. So we first have a grasping at the I as being truly establishment, and then there is the tambo the nga demadrupa yure, then a jen
Tambo nga demadrupa santa, and then ngai lapa ngai nye ngai what the demadrupa zine.
So first there is a grasping at I, then there is a grasping at mine, and this is the root of cyclic existence. So first a grasping at I, and then Rinpoche said a grasping at mine. These are my hands, these are my body, and this is the root of cyclic existence.
My friend, my
enemy.
You know what they call
So this is the root of cyclic existence.
They call
So then it states, I bow down to compassion for the condition of cyclic existence.
Chiga nachi dungela so to ga nyomu bi chun res nyomu bi chun chiga daji dungela so ba ta nyomu ba to su jukan la tene shwa res na nga da ba to ji ji su ga ta nga da ba to ji denzil shwa yo res tamu nyomu je na ma le ji su la ta le shwa di ta le shwa lu tun je da na di yu to je ne nenju ba da ngo ba jes not on the Gagoras, not the Ramon Marut, then the invasions.
So the long Kali Suranang Rinpoche.
Yamun, Yamosana, Yamun, the Jack Controllers over the Junsana, Chaganachi, the Galas over the Yamun Devo. Yamu between Chaganachi, the Galas over the Yamu to Sukato, ne Jo, ne Naramon to the Zevalat and Shonvares. 달리죠. 지다스는 나라원 저버들 지달로 지다. 달리죠. 류도저 다른데 유도 도시네 내주바에 다는 거바시스. 어디 나라원 저버들 지바데 나라원 저버들 지바 유도 도바시네. 안에 내주바에 not the Madrute, then the invasions of what the Tagon Goers.
So the afflictions and the faults of the afflictions, like the sufferings. So this is from the entrance to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti. The afflictions and the faults. Faults of the afflictions are that they give rise to the experience of such things as birth, aging, sickness, and death, come from grasping at inherent existence. The yogi disregards this fallacy or this wrong view. So here it's saying that in dependence upon the understanding of dependent origination, the yogi sees the lack of true establishment in things and disregards the view that grasps at inherent existence.
What did that? Takante Tony Carson on the Chief Marta Tony, not the Mamaruasan Tana Debatanu, and Kamaraji Demaruasan Tan Gumbaina Debatana, either Kadula Suba, Demaruasan Tana Debatana, Chichi Kayum, Taba Demaruasan Tana Debatagre, Mutaba Demaruasan Tana Debatana, Carson on Chief Jibaris.
So anything that we think about, any subject that we think about the emptiness of, is sufficient and can purify our misdeeds. So if we think of the lack of true establishment of the I, this is meditation on emptiness. If we think of the lack of true establishment of a house, this is meditation on emptiness. If we think about the lack of true establishment of shape or color, then this is meditation on emptiness. If we think of the lack of true establishment of permanent phenomena or impermanent phenomena, then this is meditation upon emptiness.
당한수 추수 감아들 찾아버리는 하마는 마소제다지 감바로다. 다 추수기뉴 안는데 봐서 산다다 붙여는 거잖아. 다 사강이스 라고 말아. 사강이스 도비타고로 미기타고 말아.
So we can use the example of the Chenrezig Center. Before, it was a center. Someone else owned this house, and a different person owned it. But then, Ted purchased the center, and then we put all of these religious things in here, and tankas and statues and so forth, and now we nominally designate it as the Chenrezig Center. But before it wasn't that. Before it was just someone else's house, but now we name it. It serves as a basis of designation for the name Chenrezig Center.
다들 감바데 와데 감바기 샤데 감바레베 노드 감바레베 도산탄 마로다. 가 샤탄로 강가 추비 초바데 감바레마도 네 소소소는 샤탄로 노다 샤소소는 데 추주 감바데 마로다.
So we ask, is the north part of the house the house? Is the east part of the house the house? Is the house all of these things together? So these are the questions that we have to ask. Is the house somewhere separate in north, south, east, or west? Or is the house somehow combined in all of these north, south, east, wests together? So all of the things come together, the shapes and the colors, and then we nominally designate this as a temple or as the Chenrezig Center. So we can also think about our head, for instance. Is this part of our head our head? Is that part of our head our head? Is the north, south, the different parts part of our head? And we have to say no, that it's all of this coming together that we then name as our head. These individual colors and shapes are not truly established, and we have to think about this. It's important to understand emptiness first, and then whatever meditation we do, we can purify our misdeeds with it.
tubi tazang ina yobe achasana tubi tazang ina yobe macho rabungra chuji rabungra tubi tazang yin tazang to yomares
Dopi dot
rabungra sana tubi tazang tu rabungra wonya tuba jero da tubi tabaro da tubi taba zang to yomares.
Rinpoche is speaking of a rabbit with horns, and it is not established as a basis of designation, because it's not established, it's not existent.
Tubi tazang to yobala daji tsema yinba tanyebe tseme meneba tuandang juji tseme meneba song sang wu song. And you do say tubi tazang to use tabo de tubi tazang to yore not tubi tazang to yores tubi tazang ina tazang to yobe macha rabungra chushi rabungra chushi tubi tazang to mende and tanyebe tseme ne use rabungra meba shibi lutu ne urda rabungra yose lazuna rabungra meba shibi lutu ne urda daji tsema yinba 타니비 세면면에 보통도 주의 세면면 군주도비 세면면에 봐 된동도비 세면면에 봐 송구를 송.
So Rinpoche is teaching something that I'm going to have impossible time to translate right now, because it's about emptiness and conventional designation and ultimate designation, and the basis of designation needing to be a valid cognition. So I need to table this until next time, because it's just language that I'm not familiar with, and I don't want to make a mistake within the conversation about emptiness.
다 rabung rasana rabung anjuna jil den rata goro rabung anjuna jil den rai sanan daji sama maro da rabung anju tarare dio maro daji sama mares and ngala ngas tabaina daji sama res.
So Rinpoche is saying that the rabbit of a horn can't be established with valid cognition, but the I can be established by valid cognition.
다 다시 tsema yinbas 타님의 tsema bas 나도 나오지 나도 나이스 라발라 돈도 tsema 그녀고 말해 군주도 tsema 그녀고 말했어.
So that the I that's established isn't harmed by ultimate valid cognition or conventional valid cognition.
What is going to
So this is all things that you need to understand, but I would have needed to present those for you to understand them. Sorry. So if we think that I, nga yin sena, I am I. So if you say that the I is an I, it doesn't harm ultimate valid cognition, nor does it harm conventional valid cognition.
So it doesn't harm valid conventional or ultimate valid cognition, because there is an existent designation, an existent designation. So is rabbit with horns established? No, because it harms conventional valid cognition and harms ultimate valid cognition. What this one to get with that is some tiny semeneba, don't you semeneba, soon go somewhere. Oma Hatung Chimbutan, Oma Gumara Zeta, Oma Teding Ishakan.
So Rinpoche is saying that we can find this information in the last section of the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the special insight section, as well as in the Namgyal Monastery. So Rinpoche is saying in the later section of the special insight section of this, and you find these three factors that have to be present. Well, I'll look them up when we get home, but there's an ultimate valid cognition, a conventional valid cognition, and there's one other And I'm sorry, I just don't have the vocabulary.
근데 어쩌면 엄마 공부하세요. 엄마 주비 공부하세요. 다 사실 뜻이 상말이요.
And then in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, you find this information as well.
뭐다 가데 나오냐면 나오냐불로 다정도 여버스. 다정도 여데 타님이 세면은 저도주 세면은 비해서 다정도 여스.
So the nominal designation of the I exists because it doesn't harm the conventional valid cognition and ultimate valid cognition and one other thing that I don't know the translation of.
나데 나오냐베로 다정도 여버스.
So the mind that apprehends the I designates it as such.
다정도 여버데 다질
Designated exists.
뜨네 여버스 뜨네. 마두바랑도 여버스.
The designation exists, but it doesn't exist in a way that is inherently existent or independently existent. The designation itself of the I, the naming of the I, exists, but it doesn't exist independently or inherently exist. So the I is based on a collection of aggregates and so forth. There is not any intrinsically existent I, therefore it is not truly established.
다men 된 로나도시 최단 가자이 나니 송스 가자 랑원의 마루바데 가자 대바 마루바데 가자 다멜로 그레스 가자리 제비 추 대바 마루바데 추지 다멜로 그레스 최단 가자이 나니 송스 다메들라 가자 다메 추지 다메니 가자 다메스나 가자 대바 마루바데 가자 데메스 그레스 가자 딘 돈이들 가자 데메스 그레스 다메 추din 돈이들 추지 다메.
So when we look at the two different types of emptiness, we find that there's emptiness of self and emptiness of person and emptiness of phenomena. So when we say the emptiness of person, it's the person's emptiness, the person's lack of true establishment, the person's lack of inherent existence. Then anything that is not person falls into the category of the selflessness of person, the emptiness of person, the lack of true of phenomena, the selflessness of phenomena, the lack of true establishment of phenomena, the emptiness of phenomena. These all mean the same thing. So we have the selflessness of person, the emptiness of person, the lack of true establishment of person. We have the selflessness of phenomena, the lack of true establishment of phenomena, and the emptiness of phenomena, and this all means the same thing.
네 pombo deba maruba de chuji dame pombo ngaba da jang raji ji toma na ma da ju su ta wo jon de ge kaza ga dame de chuji dame ni ga den wo res jang de kaza deba maruba ma je pombo ngaba da jang ne deba maruba res kaza deba maruba da chuji deba maruba ni ga den wo res de
tambo pombo ngaba de da jang ranji je toma na ba zu tambo de.
So when we
see O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound prajnaparamita, should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to the empty of nature, we find a presentation of both the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena.
what the Kazaga Dam, Church Dam, what the Shirajin would take down, what the Tunil Kuachasa, what the Kazaga Dam, Church Dam, what they did was.
So we find this presentation of both the selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomenon in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. And to understand emptiness, you have to understand these.
What that Tony never could show it to the Tamutu to Samuel Temple Tomache. Tanyeba Tombanila Meba to the Dimba, Tony Gumbatero, Tombanila Meba ne. Damage, you say, Damas and a Kazaka damage, Church Avenue Gugu, Pomunga Batajan, Raji Toba, Jus Towers, Kazak damage, Church Damage, Niga Tango use, Damage, Kazak damage, Church Damebares, Damage, USA, Junila Jujin, Demane, Taba Hichebo was what they talk about the tuning some towns from water.
So then when we have the remedies or antidotes, we've gone over the first two. First, dependence on the profound sutras includes activities as receiving the oral transmissions of sutras, such as the Prajnaparamita, retaining their meaning, and reading them. Interest in emptiness, so referring to the selflessness of person and phenomena, we find both of these being presented. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. We find this being presented in both ways in this Sutra of Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. And it says it means to comprehend the reality in which there is no self, and which is luminously clear, and to have conviction that the mind is premortally pure.
What Tony David do what Jenny do some boom nature, Jeton, what to Shira Nebu to Tony David do to the
So when we look at the sutras which give presentations on emptiness, we find the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, the 8,000 verse, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, as well as the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge.
And then go to what the choose on the Chunin Hanalu Lupu waters, Lupu Kuni Kakon Chushika waters. And then go to the Chunin Kakon Karjit was cans. And then I Lores, Lu Kal to waters, Milnogres. What the Kuni of the lovers, Louis Popini, but and the Sani Churoni, what the Zubun and Ten Shuas. Sani Jushidil Dakuni to Juni Levi to Juni Levi on the Maka Shigo Rota, and then go to Shigo Marcazon Pugni Teres.
Lagua.
What the love?
Okay, so there's a story of Nagarjuna who was giving a teaching, and he noticed that in the crowd there were two young children. And the two young children were covering their mouths. And Nagarjuna came to them and asked them why they were covering their mouths. And they said that they were covering their mouths because they were actually Nagas, and that their breath was poisonous to other people. And they didn't want to do that to make them poison, and didn't want them to be other people to be scared, because if they were in their normal form as serpents, the other people would be scared. So Nagarjuna asked the two children to please come tomorrow, and not to come in disguise, come as your own self, as a Naga. So the next day, two Nagas arrived, and everyone became very, very scared. And Nagarjuna said to the crowd, don't be scared, these are just the children who were here yesterday.
What that look when what the Chuni Talu Pina, Luin Danku, Taluge, Bonji, Bon Yetche Jeton, what is looking a Louis Sadadua, Louis Macana, what the near level, and then look at when you Louis Jabal should do that, Louis Peruges, and Pichures, and then go to Louis Pay, and then look at him, but at the moment, look at Robert what the Louis and Bon Yetche Jeton to your king.
So then it was known that there were, at that time, the 100,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the 20,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutras were hidden in the Naga realms. And the Naga children went to the Naga king. These two Nagas went to the Naga king, and he said to invite Nagarjuna to the Naga land. Nagarjuna went to the Nagaland and they gave him these texts, the 100,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom, the 20,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse, to bring back to our world system.
What the two Akiwana, the new Nagarjuna, the Oma Tawashero to the Chin, Oma Bishinda Sujevaris.
So then Nagarjuna wrote the text called the Root Wisdom text, the Mulya Madhyamika Karika, and is known as the blazer of the chariot way from Madhyamaka.
What that one you go to what the is that?
So this is what is meant by meditation on emptiness. And I will look up those three qualifying in the insight section later. I just didn't want to ruin it.
Tani but the Debal temper dua, what does the case of dua? Niba Debala temper ne, Yegi Jabala subi, Zun Cheber Jena, Chuga Jen Duba Wosa, Yegi Jabala Zuija, Umbeza to say that what the Doji Samba Namatanagu, Doji Samba Tanagu, and Nigal what the Yegi Jabin Hatin Queen, Mezasa to what is done by Ina, Debal temper. Chenrezig Hagone, Uman Bemos, Hatin Queen, Mandraba Ina, Debal temper is Daji don't do Latin Gune, Nicola, Hanga Chema Quene, and then hard drama ina, Debal Dembas.
Less so.
Hagune, Hatin Queen, Marana Zola Demba, Debal Demba, what the Daga, what the theatre woman and the Mahamanis was Shaja to Bagun, Shaja to be Tugale, and then Yamijin Kunam San Danda Ujingo, theatre woman and the Mahamanis. So
this next one's very important. Dependence on recitation means to recite according to the rituals the formula such as the 100,000 syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. So here, this is when you do the front and self-generation practices and you're doing the recitations and you're imagining the circumambulation of the seed syllable at your heart. Of the various deities here, we're speaking of Vajrasattva. This is the 100,000 the 100 syllable mantra. If we were imagining that this mantra is circumambulating the syllable of Hum and our heart region, or if we're doing that with the Chenrezig mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and we're imagining that the Chenrezig mantra is then circumambulating the Hari syllable as we do the recitation, then this becomes dependent on recitation. If we are only reciting the mantras themselves without doing the front and self-generation practices, then it becomes dependence upon names and so forth. But if we are doing the actual practice itself, then it becomes dependence upon recitation.
Togal Hatin Quene, but that's Bezasatos and Hatin Hatu Dramaina, what de Jew Mamaki, what they, Luigi Deba, Nagi Deba to Tigers, Debatanavis, Mudoda.
So then, if we engage in the recitation of the 100 syllable mantra and we imagine ourselves as the deity, or we meditate on the deity and we meditate upon the actual circumambulation of the mantra at the heart zone, then it's said it's like a fire that can burn up the entire forest that's spread and then burn away our non-virtue of our body, speech, and mind. So then we have a quote from the Tantra requested by Sabahu.
Debala Tembane, Yagajabala Suba, Zun Chabra Jena, Chuga Jenton Deba, Ponzang Shuba Les, Ponzang Shuba de Haji, Suka na Mechibi. Meji is Suka what the Tsayu because Shinal Mobazuna and the medical what Shinka Sinagro. Suka na Mechibi Meji Madi Jinto Chansin Kunsi Bataras what the 친구가 치는 거로다. 치버터 example. 대주 몰라 추진 농기 바스. 안 추진 아부송 안 어디 하드 드라마 이나 어디 준비 준비 매제 디바시스 안 준비 준비 건 추진송 하도 드라마 이나 어디 뢰지 디바 나게 디바투줄래 네 두개 진행을 내봐 내손 진행을 내봐도 시는 그래서 갈래갈 타는 그래서 매제 디바시 제가 간라 example 제가 간라 님이 제제 도나 제제 무즈 좋아진스 간라 냐마샤소나 어디 간고 쉬용도 말간 가마 쉬용으로 간라 냐마샤소나 안 가시는 줄레용으로다 된다버레스 좋아진스 추진님이 네 외제 대주지 추진님이 추진 앞선 네 안 추진 송화다 때는 하도 잡아이나 대주지 도나스 대주지 도나 디비 간장 세바주 디비 간 디바드 강그 담으면서 와데 추진 앞선 안에 하고 안에 라이토가래 하던 잡아이나 안에 디비 가르드 마쇼용으로스 디비 가르드 마쇼용으로 뢰지 디바 나기 디바래 도게 진행이 내봐다 내소 진행이 내봐가 다는 송고서
The flames from the fires that spread in spring forests are out of control, burning up all the thickets. Likewise, the winds of ethical discipline fan the fires of recitation, and the flames of great perseverance burn up sins. Just as when the sun's rays destabilize snow, it melts in the unbearable brilliance, so too the snows of sins disappear when destabilized by the sunbeams of recitation and ethical discipline. So if we engage in ethical practices, and then we do the mantric recitation with the visualization involved of front and self-generation, and we imagine the mantra garland circumambulating at our chest, then we're able to burn away our non-virtues of our body, speech, and mind, and then therefore burn away their abilities to give us suffering in the future, their abilities to give rise to experiences of the lower realm rebirth. And it says, it compares it to the sun melting the snow down a snow mountain. This practice of recitation burns away our non-virtue slowly, like snow is melting. So it's slowly, as we purify a little more and a little more, we're able to get rid of those misdeeds in the way that snow slowly melts down a mountain when the sun hits it.
What then we example that in mebal pajado matu kambal na lu sesana kambal na chano lu to pana kambal na se ko meba chano.
And then an example is given of a dark room. If you turn the light off, it's dark, but if you illuminate it, it's brilliant, it's bright.
Tena jo de nyebute nenga so light chodi bare nyebute ge beji diba ngagi diba. So
the dark gloom here is compared to the dark gloom of our misdeeds of our body, speech, and mind. And the four opponent powers are like the light that gets rid of the dark gloom, the darkness.
Deju debat shadang che wures deba deyang deba shang yu chema san ta deba ta bi ta anga su nyelang ta yung gur se to de mar be de wo de ta ma yung bo to ne wo de deba ha to ya ba dang gures de si to deju sha wo sa chema ne sa chema ta ka yu ar sna mulana se ngen ba chu ba dang Mulana wade zubu debi yobache, and the Nang Chasumba dele, saying about Juba dan, saying about Juba dan, Shudan, Mamansu Tonga dan, and Juba dan, Yama dan, Dawa Tonga dan, Nakalan Joa, Mumbawa, Maheda, Manabu, Toba, Galon, Gloomy, Ganu Tuata, Oman Joy, Shinta, Lambutan, and the Chuchutan, Reda, Singi, Chetan, Kazak did Zebatan, ne Chumeva Meba, and the Kuji is only Sons, what about the what the Kalelu Norton? That debate have that to the Son Marva, what the Lun couldn't the Hijana.
The Nilam may Napo say.
Nalan the Manaban Zin, the Madab Tobot, Nilantan Debataro.
Ale, NGK, the may Napo Tolo Napo.
Tolu Navas of that. Manabal Zin Toba.
Okay.
What the Toba in Jerota.
Okay.
What the Kalelu couldn't the Hijan or the Tatarota.
Lighting a butter lamp in a dark gloom entirely clears away the darkness. Likewise, the darkness of sins accumulated for 1,000 lifetimes is quickly dispelled by the butter lamp of recitation. Further, repeat the recitations until you see signs that you have cleared away your sins. So this is what we've gone over many times. If you are mentally and physically well, you can look for various signs in your dreams in the third state. The formula of exhortation states that the signs are dreaming the following: vomiting bad food, consuming such foods as yogurt and milk, vomiting, seeing the sun and moon moving through the air, blazing fires, subduing water buffalo, dark or black persons, subduing, or it says fighting with, Rinpoche said, dark persons. I asked him where the clothing was, it just says dark persons, or black persons. Seeing the community of monks or nuns, seeing a tree that gives out a milky substance, riding upon an elephant or bull, climbing upon a lion throat, climbing up a mansion or a mountain, and listening to the teachings. These are all signs that a purification has taken place. These are all signs and dreams that there has been a purification. Natsu karma somyure. So we're done, and we will be back next week. The Platon dagi and the sum sema dandan sema diablo jormasu Jama samazu again samazu. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you everybody for listening. Apologize for any omissions. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've created for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Ithaca Tenzin Yatso, may you stay until samsara is end. Pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Rinpoche, holder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, wisdom and perseverance, Geshe Rinpoche Rinpoche